Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don. So just to introduce myself, I've been talking a little bit here during the day, and my name is David Russell. I'm the Chief Technology Officer, as Don said. My background is pretty wide and varied. I started my career working with virtual reality in the mid to late 90s. I spent a number of years doing custom software development in a variety of different languages. And have spent time doing image analysis with the Air Force for hyperspectral and multispectral imagery. And then over the past 10 or so years, have been working with business intelligence, business data, doing and predictive analytics and machine learning and a variety of different topics that I've been looking at. And so in that span of time, I've been looking at the way the technologies have progressed and the way we've been moving towards the current technologies that we're seeing and some of the shifts that are happening that we've sort of touched on in some of the other discussions, whether it was talking about moving to cloud and some of the things that are going on there and some of the benefits of data volumes and the data availability and resources for processing those data that Liz talked about. All of these things have been building to where we are today. And this, we talk about modernization now. Modernization really means different things for different people based on where they are, because we're always modernizing at some level and we've been moving forward. Today, we have certain things we're talking about that are moving to a more modern area. And it's really been, we've been talking about it for a number of years now, sort of the idea of democratization of data analysis. How do we continue to allow more people to have access to the data that they need in order to, get more from the resources they have available? We're sort of in a new era. This is one way to think about things. We had people starting with just products that they developed. And then you had, in the software industry, you were developing products and then providing services around those products and providing, any business, in the software industry, you see it, but in any business, you have the idea of products and services. The auto industry is a, prime area where you see that. So it's not that it's really those two are targeted to those, decades, if you will. But historically, that's been what we've been looking at. In the last decade, we've been looking hard at customer 360. How do we take all the information that we have in our business about our customers, and how do we develop a picture of those customers so that we really can get back to treating them as individuals, even when we're dealing with a large number of customers and a large number of people we're dealing with, rather than in the past, we might have had a customer 360 with a small business because you had a very small set of customers, so you knew all of them and you knew everything about them. But today, most of us are dealing with a pretty wide variety of clients, a lot of different customers, and really understanding them was important and something we were moving towards and focusing more on that personalization and that ability to do that. And also, we've been talking about digital transformation. How do we move from doing things, I'll say the old way, if you will, and not focusing on the digital technologies? We've been building in that direction. We've been using computers. We've been using digital technologies. But how do we really, transform our business with those technologies rather than just having them sit beside the business that we were already doing, but move that digital capability into the core of our business? And today, we're really talking about the data-centric business, and we're really talking about focusing on the fact that we all have a lot of data about our customers and about our business processes, and how do we make the most of that, and how do we take advantage of it throughout the organization? A lot of different ideas about what it really means to be data-centric, particularly around the customer experience, but and how do you deliver that data-centric customer experience? Everything from just keeping up with your clients' demands, understanding what they need and why they need it, expanding on that, just personalization, but trying to be aligned to your client base and your customers that you're working with. And also this other idea of, making your data smart, using the data in an intelligent way, rather than just collecting data to collect data and having big data for the sake of big data, and having the tools and the capabilities to get the insights that you need from the data and to develop your skill sets and everything you're doing in a way that focuses on what you know and what that data is telling you. But the reality is, 73% of the data you create goes unused. In most cases, you're not able to take advantage of the data. You have it, but maybe you don't manage it. Maybe you don't keep track of it. We're really just getting started with data. We've been talking about the data growth, over the last decade, that we continue to, accelerate in the growth of data. And what we've been looking at traditionally when we talk about data growth has been the growth of data as a whole, right? We know that with, smartphones, that there's been a huge data explosion around the amount of data that's being collected, just from, position data that Liz talked about, the mobility information. That alone creates a huge volume of data. But the other thing that we have to think about is, what about the data that's under management? What's the data that we actually are, governing and tracking and making sure that we know what it means and how it can be used? In many ways, that data under management is becoming very critical to businesses, because in some cases you can even see it as a factor that the industries may look at as a way to qualify your financial position as an organization. Is how do you control the data, and are you able to take advantage of it? Just recording the data that you need day to day to meet your business functions may not be enough to get you forward to understanding how to improve your business functions and improve what you're doing. And just recording it isn't really enough. Making sure that you can manage it, control it, and gain insights from it is what really builds value for your company. And the data that you do collect and manage, that's the fuel for artificial intelligence and AI-led digital transformation. If you're going to take advantage of artificial intelligence, if you're going to take advantage of these technologies that you see being presented to you, you've got to find a way to access and harness the data that you have available. Now, a lot of you are going to say that we've known about this for a long time. It's not like we haven't been collecting data. It's not like we haven't been reporting on data for the last 2 decades, 2.5 decades, trying to manage the data more effectively. And we've tried a bunch of different things. And we really started with this concept of a data warehouse, right? The idea behind that data warehouse is that you organize the data in a very specific way. You have an organized and controlled process for feeding the data into that warehouse. And then you provide access to the warehouse to then deliver the data to the consumers of that data efficiently. It's what physical warehouses are designed to do, is to control that flow of materials from production to the consumers. And so the data warehouse, great idea, and it continues to be a great idea. It continues to be something that you can use to help you with your data. In the past decade, we've started looking at the idea of a data lake. People started to worry about that controlled movement into the data warehouse of setting up the structures, making sure you knew how you were going to organize the data ahead of time, making sure that you had everything precise and ready to be delivered, and you had your shelves arranged just right to hold your data. That became a concern for people, and rightly so in many cases. So we came up with the concept of data lake. The idea was you start pouring the data in sort of an unrefined fashion. You then make that available to people to analyze and to start to glean maybe new concepts. And then we combine those two ideas into sort of this hybrid world of data management, where you have your data lake collects all the data, whether you know how to use it right away or not. And then you have people analyze data out of the data lake and start to refine that and then move it into the data warehouse once they understand how you're going to use it consistently. And again, not saying that that model is dead, still a good model. But in order to make that model work, you've got to have some sort of governance. Whether you're working with a data warehouse or you're working with a data lake, you need to have a capability to know what that data is, to know where it is, to know what it means, to know who should have access to it, to secure that access to it. And all of those things are part of the governance process. Governance, though, is kind of hard because it's not just a technology solution. And as an engineer, I love to have a pure technology solution that just solves my problem. And so we've gotten sort of enamored with data warehouses and data lakes because there's technology solutions. Governance is back to, as Liz was talking about, how you deal with your data science projects. There's a people, process, and technology all involved there. And when you start involving the people and process necessary to track the data warehouse and data lake concepts and those structures, it starts to get messier. Who should have access? Who should be able to change the data or add new data to the warehouse? Where is the data in the data lake? How do we manage it properly? How do we secure it properly? What are our policies as a business around how we manage it? All of those things are necessary, and we've tried a lot of different techniques to manage that, whether it's a wiki or a spreadsheet with just a lot of information in it, or maybe a custom tool, a tool specific to governance. All of those are things that we've tried in the past and that we continue to use. The problem is when you don't have that, your data warehouse starts to look more like a data vault. A few people have the ability to put data in, and then nobody can figure out how to get it out. Because if you don't have the security right, nobody is allowed to pull the data from the warehouse directly because you can't be certain that they are getting the data they should get, or your structures, you're not giving the right data to the right people at the right time, and they just feel like it's a waste of time. And in some organizations, the term data warehouse becomes a bad word because it is a problem that is continually there. Same way a data lake can turn into a data swamp. You don't know where the data is, you don't know what data is there, you don't know what it means, and you don't know how you can use it and who should use it. And that creates problems as well. And then you've got those issues that I talk about, but then you've also got the need to analyze that data and to process that data, and that requires more power, and we've relied on the cloud for that. And we think that and the cloud has been the solution that again the engineers offer up because it has flexibility and scalability and elasticity and all of the things that are great about the cloud. But as an organization, you quickly find out that, well, you need on-premise as well because certain people don't want to put their data in the cloud, or you're concerned about lock-in with the cloud. And so you have this need for a hybrid solution where you have on-premise and cloud. But then we realize that, well, cloud isn't a monolithic thing either. We have another issue that, well, cloud really means we got a bunch of different clouds, and we've got our data and our processes and our workloads spread across a lot of different vendors, a lot of different clouds. And then we also have our on-premise things. How do we manage that? How do we control that proliferation and still achieve, some of the things that we need to achieve around managing our data, securing our data, and analyzing our data effectively? And it becomes a game of, managing that new environment. And so this is where, I'm talking about modernization in this case, is what are we moving to? And modernization means a lot of different things. As I said, you may be in a different place, and so becoming more modern may mean a different thing for you. But when it comes to applications and computing platforms, it really becomes the idea of cloud native and being able to do cloud native type processing on-premise or in the cloud specifically. And that's, this gets into the technical details of developing software and how software is created, microservices, containerization, and trying to achieve the right once run anywhere. We've been saying that for 25 or 30 years with Java and other languages, but getting to the point where you really have that capability, and microservices and containerization are starting to get us incrementally closer to making that the reality, that we can move our workloads wherever we need them, on-premise, in the cloud, and that we run the same thing whether we're on-premise or in the cloud. For data and analytics specifically, it's focusing on simple and capable data tools, whether that's open source, whether that's enterprise software, closed source things. Having a tool that makes it simple for someone to access the data that they need to access, only access that they can, the data that they can access, and make that simple for them. We're also talking about data discovery at the enterprise scale. How do I find the data that I need? How do I know what it means? And how can I get it for myself sooner, rather than needing to wait months for a team to cleanse it and put it into a data warehouse or organize it into the data lake appropriately for me. Need to make it governed and secure. I talked about governance is a problem for the traditional ways of doing things. Those traditional ways aren't going to go away. We're just going to be adding some capabilities alongside those, but continuing to expand on governance and security to make sure that people can trust the data and know what the data means. The idea of running anywhere. Your data analytics platform should be flexible. You should be able to run wherever you need it to run, ideally where you can get closer to the data and not have to necessarily move the data in order to be able to analyze it. And then you need to be able to connect to data everywhere. You need to be able to access your data, whether, regardless of which cloud it's in, regardless of if it's on premise in a database, regardless of where it lives, you need to be able to connect to it and take advantage of it. And then on the AI and machine learning, message that IBM started delivering a few years ago, and one that I believe in, the idea we need transparency with AI. We need to know how the AI and the machine learning algorithms made the decisions that they made. We need to be talking about training, making sure that people know when they should trust the AI and when they shouldn't. We need to be able to look at a result that planning analytics gives us with an AI algorithm to do time series analysis, and we need to make sure that people are aware of any caveats that they might need to be aware of when those come out, so that they know when they should trust it and then know when to be a little bit skeptical, because at least for now, artificial intelligence algorithms are not, we're not necessarily talking about the scary ones that Elon Musk warns us about yet, that are general purpose AI. And so we need to understand that, and people need to know what we're really talking about when we talk about AI, and they need to be trained that way. And the other thing is the augmented intelligence rather than pure artificial intelligence. We need to understand that we're really trying to enhance what our employees are able to do and what our, the people that are empowered to make the decisions are able to do, and then augment them with the machine learning and AI algorithms, rather than necessarily thinking that we're going to replace everybody immediately and not have a human in the loop, so that we can effectively answer the questions that we need to answer efficiently, effectively, and take advantage of both data and our people, and be able to achieve our goals effectively, ethically, and securely. All right, so I ran through that pretty quickly. Are there any questions?
Sure. Thanks, David. That was great. So we do have a few. Can you talk about the cloud? We had a question about, do you need multi-cloud, or could it be single, or is on-premise okay?
The reality is you can work with any of those, right? What we're really seeing is that we do need some flexibility in the way things are deployed. So whether you're working with a single cloud vendor, whether you end up on multiple clouds, there's certainly tools to assist you if you do end up in multiple clouds, to make sure that you make that efficient and that you make moving among them easier. But there's not one solution that is the right solution, if you will. I would certainly say that the cloud, there are more and more tools to make the cloud less and less a problem to be locked into the cloud, if you will. That has been a lot of, you've got people worried about security, and lock-in are two of the major barriers that I hear about for moving to cloud. And I think that security, most organizations need to understand that clouds are more secure than your on-premise solutions in most cases. So I think that one is starting to erode. But then you still have the lock-in question. And I think that we're getting the right technologies to allow for the flexibility to run anywhere, so that you can reduce that barrier to entry of the cloud as well. So but again, I think all of them are possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. What about containers and microservices? Can you explain why people might be interested in those? Why would they care about them?
I would say that a lot of people don't really care ultimately and shouldn't care. You know, it's traditionally when you're using an application, an end user application, you don't care if it was written in Python or Java or C++. You just care that it does what you need it to do. And you can think about microservices and containers as sort of giving you that. But by the same token, if you're a data scientist and people have told you to worry about the libraries that you're using and the potential conflicts between different versions of libraries when you're building a model next to another team member who may be building a model. And if you use different versions of the same library, you might have a conflict if you try to run those on the same piece of equipment, same hardware, same server. And so for those people, containerization becomes an interesting topic to be aware of because that gives you a capability to separate those models, and you may run them in the same environment on the same hardware, but the fact that you have two separate libraries that you're using, each container uses its own set of libraries and its own set of software, and so that containerization is important to those people to understand that. So, you know, I don't think you have to understand it to know where things are going, but certainly IT people trying to be more resource, use their resources more efficiently, and for data scientists or developers that are writing software, they need to be aware of them because they are becoming more and more important to this, I'll say, the cloud native environments and the ability to be mobile with what you're developing.
Yeah. Okay, cool. One more for you. Do you think that we're at a point where we have the right tools to make data and analytics simple and easy for folks?
That's always a bit of a loaded question for an engineer, right? I thought we had pretty good tools for a long time, but that's because I'm an engineer and I'm perfectly happy with a usable interface and I can figure out how to fix things when they don't work exactly right. I mean, ultimately, we're getting there, and we certainly have a lot better tools that are making it easier to democratize the data analytics, whether it's your business intelligence tools that are making it really simple to drag and drop data into locations and take advantage of them, to your the flexibility of environments to span multiple development languages, multiple techniques for doing data analysis and be collaborative in those environments. I think that's making it a whole lot easier to think about having teams that work together in that space. We're definitely, everybody says it's the golden age because it's the best it's ever been, and we are there because it's the best it's ever been. From a data and analytics perspective. Will it get better? Yes, it's going to get better. And that's just the way that goes. You're going to find new tools in the future that make your life easier when it comes to data and analytics. But we're certainly in a good place right now to start having people involved in the process that may not have been able to be involved previously.
Okay, awesome. Just one more if you can answer it quickly, because I know we want to move on. Is there any credible model emerging or evolving that leaves the data lake or data warehouse hybrid model?
I think that what we're seeing, I think, is sort of an incremental improvement over that model. I think that there are a lot of different implementations of both data warehouses and data lakes, right? There are a lot of competing data warehouse technologies. There are a lot of different competing technologies for the data lake. And even and data lakes, in my mind, have even a broader definition, right? So it's hard to know what you're dealing with there. So that hybrid combination, I think, is probably still valid. I think the question more is the implementation of those and recognizing, right, does Hadoop equal data lake, right? For a while, people thought Hadoop equals data lake or data lake. We've gotten past that. And so now it's more about, I don't see a new model that necessarily overtakes it, but I think that there are new tools to implement a very similar environment, because I personally, I think of data virtualization and a lot of the new enhancements that we're seeing as being new enhancements to data lakes as a concept because I don't think there's a strong enough definition for a data lake. The traditional data warehouse where you move all the data into a central location, that one is starting to decline a little bit as we're talking about being able to do processing and ETL and things like that on the fly and on demand. But I haven't seen anything that suggests that it's going to go away entirely for performance reasons. You know, even what Rich was talking about with the data set, we can start talking about data sets as not being a data warehouse, but you've moved your data locally to make it more performant and you've organized it in a certain way. It's not a data warehouse in a classic data warehouse concept, but you've essentially done the same thing from a technical implementation perspective. So, you know, I struggle myself definitionally to answer that question.
All right. All right. Well, thank you. If Don wants to jump in here for a minute.
Yeah, thanks, Liz, for facilitating the questions. And David, great job, as usual, talking about really complex subjects and trying to make them a little more understandable for the rest of us. I see you have a call to action slide here around our ability to help with doing strategy and roadmaps, or you know, kind of a visioning workshop to talk about how to move you from wherever you are today to a modern analytics environment, as well as just different abilities to show you different of IBM's advanced analytics software. I was very impressed. David did this whole presentation without using very specific IBM or other vendor product names. You know, I kind of like that because we'd like to help you get from wherever you are today, whatever environment you are, to a more flexible, usable environment. Every technology company has products that can help you do that, but we'd like to take a consultative approach to help you get from where you are to where you need to be.